Police officers say they have no evidence that anyone else was involved in the death of Russian tycoon Boris Berezovsky. The findings come as more details are released around the circumstances of his death, including how a worker found his body inside a locked bathroom. John Brain reports.
In the heart of the English home counties, specially trained police officers preparing to search for chemical and radioactive material at the home of a Russian oligarch. By lunchtime today, Boris Berezovsky's mansion at Ascot had been given the all-clear. But the investigation into the circumstances of his death continues. The body of the 67-year-old was discovered in a bathroom by an employee who had to force open the door. Mr. Berezovsky, a former ally turned critic of the Russian President Vladimir Putin, was a sworn enemy of the regime in Moscow and claimed the intelligence service, the FSB, wanted him dead. He was due to give evidence at the inquest of his friend, the dissident Alexander Litvinenko. A former Scotland Yard commander who worked briefly for both men says the initial police response to his death was fully justified.
The police fears were realistic because once they've got a situation where somebody like Boris, who's been at odds with Putin for such a long time and may indeed be a target for the FSB or anybody else, then it's quite realistic to suspect that those people who may have wished him harm may have had access to radioactive materials.
But Mr. Berezovsky had recently experienced a series of personal setbacks. He was said to have been particularly demoralised following the loss of a multi-billion-pound High Court battle with his fellow Russian Roman Abramovich. Despite Mr. Berezovsky's fear that he'd be a target for assassination, the police say there's nothing to suggest anyone else was involved in his death here. They're now trying to establish his state of mind. He'd recently acknowledged being extremely depressed and said he was homesick for Russia. A post-mortem examination is due to be carried out tomorrow. Until then, detectives are describing the Russian magnate's death as unexplained. John Brain, BBC News, Ascot.